Hello there, and welcome to the 9th installment of the Citizen Academy's Beginner's Guide to Star Citizen. Wow, it's hard to believe this is the 9th installment. Well, there's only one more to go, so this will be a 10-part series when it's finally complete. Now, in this installment, you're going to learn all about your spaceship. Now, one little note I should mention here is you're not going to learn anything about how to fly your ship in this video. That is a subject for an entirely different video, maybe even 2 or 3 videos, like a little multi-part tutorial, which I plan to do later on. In this video, you're only going to learn about your ship in a more generic sense, how it functions, what the different designs are, how shields work, that sort of thing. Learning how to fly, that will come later. So this is going to be a really long video, and we have a lot of information to go over, so let's get started. Spaceship design. There will be ships designed for dozens of occupations. So whatever it is that you want to do in the Star Citizen universe, there will be a ship or multiple ships to fit your needs just fine. One thing that I really like is that each ship will have its own, I guess you would call, personality, its own feel, its own way of handling when you're flying around in space. That is really, really going to be cool. And of course, the level of fidelity and the level of detail in these ships, if you've been watching this series, you already know that the level of detail is going to be absolutely phenomenal. Now, these ships are not just going to be like hollowed out 3D models. These ships are going to be actually fully functional ships as if they would exist in real life with all sorts of operable parts, components that move, that actually operate as they would in real life. Ships will have a sense of being your home. Since you're going to be spending an awful lot of time in your ship, you want to be nice and cozy. And so you'll have sleeping quarters, you'll have a place to prepare meals, a place to sit down around a table and chat with your crew members, stuff like that. And as the years go on, new models will come out to replace current models, and the spaceship manufacturers will come out with brand new lines of ships as well as the years go on. Also, to make each manufacturer's ships even more distinct, not only will they have their own style, their own sense of handling, the computer voices in the cockpit will be distinct for each manufacturer. Now, in case you're worried that the incredible level of fidelity and detail in these ships will mean that you're going to need like a Cray supercomputer to play Star Citizen, don't worry about it. There are going to be multiple levels of detail for each ship. So even if you have sort of a moderately powerful computer, it still should be able to handle Star Citizen. Now, you may not be able to play Star Citizen at the very highest graphic level details or at the smoothest frame rate, but you should still be able to play it with a moderately powerful computer. Now, if you're interested, I have another video in this series, video part 6, that goes into great detail on what the hardware requirements are for playing Star Citizen at various levels of play. So check it out. Now let's go over this really quickly, the names of all the ship manufacturers. There is Roberts Space Industries, Anvil Aerospace, Aegis Dynamics, Origin Jumpworks, Kruger Intergalactic, Drake Interplanetary, MISC, and Consolidated Outland. So if you become a fan of Star Citizen, you will eventually get to know these names very, very well indeed. So just to give you a little idea of all the different variety of ships that will be in Star Citizen, let's have a quick look at just a few of the different types of ships that will be available for you to get. Well, there are going to be lots of ships for engaging in warfare. Lots and lots. There will be ships for doing salvage operations, for being like an information runner. Lots of different kind of ships to engage in transporting goods. ships for engaging in like security or bounty hunting, luxury yachts, racing, rescue missions or doing medical services, mining operations, sort of a jack-of-all-trades style of ships, loads of ships for doing exploration, and even alien ships. And this is just as things stand now, as the game is in pre-alpha. By the time Star Citizen is actually released, there will be loads more styles of ships available. I can guarantee you that. Now, one of the really cool things about Star Citizen is after you get yourself a ship, you're not stuck with the ship as it is when you get it. There will be a lot of ways to customize your ship. For example, you can overclock the components on board your ship, which means tweaking them to perform above and beyond their specifications. Now, there are a few risks in doing this. For example, channeling more energy to a certain component on your ship may weaken other components because they're not getting as much energy from the engines. Overclocking your components might also raise your heat signature so the other ships out there looking for you will be able to spot you easier. You will also be able to save the custom settings that you do inside your cockpit for various controls and how the different screens look and whatnot. You'll be able to save those sort of like a bookmark with a web browser to your favorites. That is going to be a real time saver. So what this means is if you want to play a more defensive role on your ship one day, you can load in the pre-configured settings for that, or if you want to play a more aggressive role, you can load those settings as well. So that is a really cool feature to have. Oh, and you'll also be able to name your ship, within reason, of course. I mean, you're not going to be able to give your ship some rude or obscene type of a name. Now, you will be able to change the paint job on your ship, but you're not going to be able to do like a 100% custom paint job that you in particular want. I would imagine there are going to be a whole series of preset paint jobs that you can switch into for your ships. And there will also be nose art and decals. So if you are a member of an organization, you can have the logo for your organization on the nose of your ship. That's going to be pretty cool. There's also going to be something called electro-hull paint. What this means is it's a reactive style paint that you can change the color of with a flick of a switch inside your cockpit. So if you're a pirate or on the other side of the law, something like that might come in handy for you. Now, there are several types of upgrades you can perform on your ship, and I want to go over these really quick. You can upgrade the avionics package on your ship. You can upgrade the thrusters, the weapons, the jump drive, if your ship comes equipped with a jump drive. You can upgrade your cargo holds, if your ship comes with a cargo hold, that is. You can upgrade the engines, bulkhead reinforcements, shield generators, the power plant, and even the computer systems in the cockpit. So there's quite a wide variety of upgrades you can make for your ship, which is really great because what that means is the specifications that you read about on the RSI website about a particular ship you're interested in, you don't have to worry about being stuck with those specs for the entire length that you have that ship. You can tweak it, you can upgrade it, you can modify it to suit your own particular needs. Now, about those paint jobs, I don't imagine that the custom paint jobs are going to be really elaborate. I'm under the impression they're going to be more generic in nature. For example, here is the standard color for a ship. You might be able to give it a more of a bluish cast to the paint job, or something more of a outlandish bright green color like this, or this really cool camouflage theme. Then again, I'm not sure why you would need camouflage in the vacuum of space. Well, anyway, whatever. Now, some paint jobs I don't think they're going to allow. I'm just saying. Now, as a little side note, I want to apologize if it seems like I'm really going through this tutorial pretty quickly. I know I'm talking a little faster than I usually do. But this is actually my second go at editing this video, and the first version was well over 1 hour long. And I don't think that's really fair to my viewers to have them have to watch like an hour and a half video on one topic. So I'm trying to really thin this down to just the most important points and to talk a little bit faster so that maybe get it down to a manageable time frame. With that said, let's carry on. Crew members on your ship. You're going to be able to invite your friends to be crew members on your ship. This is going to help promote a lot of interactivity between players, whether they're your next door neighbor or somebody who lives on the other side of the planet. They're going to be able to go on adventures with you on your ship. Now, the maximum number of crew members you can have on your ship is indicated on the RSI website when you look up the specs for a ship. What that means is that is the number of crew members that are needed to fly that ship at its most optimal, best level. That isn't how many crew members you need to have. You can also have more people than that on your ship. For example, you can have a full complement of crew members, and you can also have, say, a half dozen or so passengers on your ship as well. And as was mentioned in a previous part of this beginner's guide, you can mix and match having real live players or having NPC characters as crew members aboard your ship. Also, each crew member, whether they're a real live human or an NPC character, will have a reputation ranking, so to speak, which indicates how well they are at performing a particular task. So if you're down on a planet and you're looking for somebody to hire to be a gunner on your ship, you can look up people who take on jobs like that by their reputation rank and choose appropriately the very best, or perhaps someone who isn't going to charge you quite as much. Now, a lot of people want to know, are we going to be able to land our ships on planets? Well, the answer to that is yes, but it is not going to be a seamless sequence of events as you get close to the planet and fly through the atmosphere, go down to the lower atmosphere, and land in some city. At least for now, that is. So when Star Citizen first comes out, there are going to be specific locations on each planet that you will be able to land. And the landing sequence is going to be an in-engine cinematic that's sort of a pre-packaged cutscene that shows you landing at a particular location on a planet. You won't have any control over that short segment. But the word is that once they get procedural planets built, much, much later on, you will be able to actually land all by yourself. The exception to landing on planets will be for the really huge capital ships, like carriers and the larger battleships. Those will never be able to land on a planet. Now, while you're down on the planet, there will be ships called hovers that are like shuttlecraft that take you to various locations on the planet. And there's also going to be an advanced rails system also. Now I want to talk about a really huge topic, the spaceflight model. All spaceships in Star Citizen are going to be fly-by-wire, like the modern-day F-35 Lightning II. And what that means is it's going to be the opposite of the old style of flight control, where you have a series of wires and pulleys that are attached to the controls in the cockpit, and those control flaps, engines, and that sort of thing. It's not going to be anything like that. Fly-by-wire is where the inputs that you put in from the controls in the cockpit are transmitted electronically by computer to the various components on your ship. So this is going to be a far more precise way of controlling spaceflight. And a critical thing to remember is that all spaceflight in Star Citizen is going to adhere 100% to a Newtonian physics model. So, for example, the mass of your ship and the distribution of that mass on your ship is going to affect the flight dynamics. For example, if you add cargo to your ship, that's more mass. Now your ship is going to fly differently than if it was without cargo. Another more interesting example is if you're in a space battle and a part of your ship gets blown off, your moment of inertia has been altered. And that, in turn, because again, it follows the laws of Newtonian physics, since your moment of inertia has changed, the flight dynamics of the ship, again, is going to be changed. Your engines, the power plants, shields, weapons, cooling systems, radar, avionics, life support, they are all going to be individually crafted components on your ship, and they're all going to be communicating with one another. There are also going to be a few different types of radar. There's going to be shadow radar, heat radar, electromagnetic radar, reflective radar, image recognition radar, and there will also be systems to indicate whether a ship that is in your sights is a friend or a foe. And like most space sims out there, you will be able to shift power from shields to weapons to engines in various combinations. Now, one thing that's going to make spaceflight for you really interesting is that you're going to have to manage all the resources of your ship. So your power generators, the shields, the weapons, the radar, the avionics, your life support, you're going to have to monitor and control all of those, all at the same time as you're in a space battle or when you're engaging in whatever activities you're doing out there in space. So you're not going to be able to just sit back and relax on cruise control and let the ship do everything. The types of engines you will be able to have on your ship include fission power, fusion, and antimatter. Also, unless your ship has really overpowered thrusters, when you try to change course, it's not going to be instantaneous like you see on other space sims. And again, this is because the flight model follows Newtonian physics 100% of the time. So unless you basically ease your way into a new trajectory, you're probably going to overshoot and then have to counter-correct. And that can be kind of frustrating. And on top of that, counter thrust by your maneuvering thrusters can also overcorrect in the opposite direction. And this explains why if you've been in Star Citizen and you've been in Arena Commander trying to shoot other ships, that explains why as you're trying to maneuver to get your aim just right on an enemy ship, that the ship feels really twitchy, like it's jerking around a lot. That's because it's following a true Newtonian physics model, which is something most people are just not accustomed to. So in a way, you need to anticipate where you want to go before you change your trajectory. And if you run out of fuel in space, you can send out a distress signal, and a refueling ship, like the Starfarer, for example, will hopefully come to your rescue. And finally, the engines give power to the shields, life support, avionics, weapons, and your thrusters. Moving right along to our next topic, G-forces and you. G-forces will have a definite impact on you as a pilot as you make maneuvers in space. If you make turns too violently, the force of gravity will either cause a blackout, or also known as a grayout, which is the blood rushing away from your brain, or a redout, which is the blood rushing to the brain. Now, you'll definitely know when you're experiencing these because a blackout is manifested by your vision becoming blurry and kind of gray, and then dark gray, and then black. Whereas a redout, as the name suggests, is your vision becomes tinted sort of a red color, then a deep red color, as the blood is rushing to your brain. Now, you may have noticed, if you've played around in Arena Commander, that as you make sharp turns, your ship automatically slows down. And this is done to lessen the effects of G-forces on your body. Now, those forces of gravity are in the vertical position, up and down. There are also lateral gravitational forces to the left and right. Those won't necessarily make you lose your vision or pass out, but they will potentially, depending on how severe they are, cause structural damage to your ship. And in extreme cases, one of your thrusters might break off, one of your wings might break in a certain point, and so on. Also, most of the ships are going to have artificial gravity inside. However, if your ship takes damage and the gravity generator goes offline and you're in the cockpit, you're going to end up, if you're not restrained properly, floating around in your cockpit while you're trying to fly your ship, which is a good reason to be sure you're always wearing your handy-dandy magnetic boots. Aside from your engines and thrusters and shields and so on being individually engineered components within your ship, the doors, wing flaps, the landing gear, they all operate as they would in real life. So they are all true mechanical systems aboard your ship, which is another way of saying each individual component on your ship is represented by an actual physical item on the ship itself. For example, the life support system on your ship is an actual physical functioning component of your ship, rather than being some generic system that has a label slapped on it that you see on some display somewhere. Now, the heads-up displays will be unique as all the ships are unique to one another. But overall, each manufacturer has their own style of heads-up displays that they make for their ships. But even within each brand of ship, there are variations. And also, the simpler the ship, the simpler the heads-up displays are going to be. So in the more advanced ships, the larger, more powerful ships, they're going to have more advanced components, and to go along with those, they're going to have more advanced heads-up displays. Now, one thing that's really going to add a very interesting flavor to Star Citizen is that there will be computer hacking within the game. And I'm not talking about hacking the actual game itself. I mean, you will be able to hack into the computers of enemy ships. You will be able to send viruses to their ships, computer systems. If they're scanning you, you will be able to block those scans from seeing what's inside your ship. All sorts of variations of hacking will be possible within Star Citizen. And this is a little diagram that I borrowed from one of my previous videos in the Beginner's Guide series, but it's worth showing a second time. This basically is a schematic diagram that represents your weapons, shields, cooling systems, batteries, heads-up displays, avionics, power plant, and radar. They are all individual components on your ship that have individual functions, and furthermore, they are all interconnected with one another. So if the cooling system on your ship becomes damaged by enemy gunfire, your weapons might start to overheat and then shut down. If your power plant becomes damaged, your shields may not function at their optimal levels, and so on. Next, we come to cockpit controls. Now, rather than have the cockpit controls on your ship be something that's really pretty to look at, in many situations, the controls are going to be actual functioning knobs, dials, and buttons that you could manipulate with your hands. And I think I just mentioned this, but each manufacturer of ships will have their own distinct styles of heads-up displays within your cockpit. And the information that you see on your heads-up displays is going to be updated in real time as events are taking place and information is sent from the computers to your heads-up display. You will also be able to customize your heads-up display to a certain extent. So let's say there's certain panels of information that are really important to you. You could have all those shifted over to one side and have the less important stuff on smaller little panels off to the opposite side. Now, as you upgrade the parts on your ship, they're going to be more complex, more advanced. So they're going to be sending more information to your heads-up display. And of course, never fear, if you get yourself in a sticky situation, there will be ejection seats on all ships. Now let's talk about how fast your ship will be able to travel in space. Now, when you're engaged in space battles, there's going to be a limit imposed on your ship as to how fast you can travel. And like I mentioned before, this is to mitigate some of the side effects of having G-forces imposed upon you. So for those sorts of speeds, currently the fastest ships, that is for now, are the Origin JumpWorks M50, which can travel at 1,008 kilometers per hour, or 626 miles per hour. And the fastest is the Origin JumpWorks 350R, which can travel at 1,080 kilometers per hour, or 671 miles per hour. So those speeds are basically the first set of maximum speeds that ships can travel, at least those two faster ones. The second speed limit, for lack of a better name, is when you engage your quantum drive in your ship. And that allows you to travel at 2/10 the speed of light. This sort of travel is meant for interplanetary travel, going from like Earth to Mars or Jupiter to the asteroid belt, that sort of thing. And this is only straight line travel, basically from point A to point B, and that's it. And of course, this is not the kind of travel you want to use for going to different star systems. Since you're only traveling at 2/10 the speed of light, it would take you a little over 20 years to get to the nearest star. Now, the third speed limit, if you could even call it that, is travel through objects called jump points. And these are essentially, to use a more modern term, wormholes in space that you travel through, and they jump you forward hundreds or even thousands or tens of thousands of light years almost instantaneously. And that sort of travel is used, of course, for traveling among different star systems throughout the Star Citizen universe. Now let's talk a little bit about ship navigation. Your ship's navigation system will be similar to the way a GPS works in your car. But of course, 930 years in the future GPS. So it's far more advanced. Your course is set using computerized star maps, waypoints, and a grid location system. And you use your ship's navigation computer to set your course for whatever your destination happens to be. And once your course is plotted, you engage autopilot and head towards your first waypoint. A waypoint is, for those who don't know, it's basically a location marker in space that is a predefined destination. Now, you will be able to make use of predefined waypoints given to you by others, and waypoints that you create yourself. And for the most part, the mode of travel you'll be using to get from one waypoint to the next will be engaging the quantum drive, which again travels at 2/10 the speed of light. And if you change your mind when you're on your route, you will be able to adjust the route to a different course, just like you can do in Google Maps. You can also set up points of interest on your route and save them to your navigation computer for future reference. Now, once you arrive at a planet, as I mentioned a little while ago in this video, you won't be able to land by yourself on a planet because atmospheric flight has not been programmed into Star Citizen yet. But that might be possible somewhere down the line. Now let's take an example of an actual navigation route from one place to another in the Star Citizen universe. Let's say you are on a planet in a solar system located right here, and you want to travel to a planet in a solar system located right here. Furthermore, let's say it's roughly 1,800 light years away. So how do you get there? Well, as I mentioned before, there are these things called jump points. Again, they're sort of like a wormhole in space, and they are scattered throughout the Star Citizen universe. Now, the thing about jump points is that each one is unique in that when you pass through it, it will dump you out in one specific location. You can't use a jump point to navigate to various locations. Each one has a starting point and an ending point, and that's all there is to it. So in some cases, you might not be able to pass through a jump point near the planet you're on right now and come out at a jump point that's right next to the planet that you want to get to. You may have to take a more indirect route. For example, in this case, you have a jump point that is 1,315 light years away, and that's the one you come out of when you enter the one that's near your planet. Then you have to go over to another jump point, and then from there, go to the jump point that's near your planet that you want to get to. So at the start, you're here on planet A. You engage your quantum drive, and you navigate through various waypoints along your route that will take you to the first jump point. And when you get to that jump point, you pass through it, and you come out at that jump point in the sort of intermediate region that's sort of halfway between where you want to get to. And I'm calling this a jump point connector, but I mean, that's not the actual term for it. I don't even know if CIG has a term for this, but I would imagine since jump points are only from one point to another point, that if when you pass through the first jump point and you haven't arrived at your destination, you're going to have to seek out another jump point that will take you further along, closer to where you want to get to. So that's why I'm calling this a jump point connector. Anyway, you do the same thing. You engage your quantum drive when you come out of your wormhole jump point, and you navigate your way to the next jump point, like this. And then that takes you out to the jump point that's closest to the planet you want to get to. And when you come out, you engage your quantum drive, you go through the various waypoints to get to the solar system you want to get to, and off to the planet you go. And that's it. Pretty simple. Now let's talk a little bit about the communication systems aboard ships. For the most part, communications will be taking place between ships over VoIP, otherwise known as Voice over Internet Protocol. In a loose sense, it's sort of like online conferencing, I guess. You will also be able to hail other ships that you locate within your general vicinity. And there will be text chatting between people on different ships. Although I'm not sure how efficient that is going to be, especially when you're in the heat of battle. Now, ship-to-ship communications will be limited to ships that are within your local star system or that are within your general region of space. From what I understand, you won't be able to communicate directly with like a friend that's on a ship that is around a planet that's 3,000 light years from where you're located. But I'm wondering, with the ability to use Skype, how are they going to prevent that? That's an interesting little question. Because there's nothing to stop two people from using Skype and being separated by thousands of light years and still be able to communicate live and in real time. So anyway, we'll just see how that goes. Now, during epic space battles, the larger capital ships will be able to give directions to the smaller fighters on the front line of battle. And there will also be the ability to eavesdrop on the communications of enemy ships by hacking into their communication systems. Now, as far as warfare itself, there will be a lot of ships that are specifically designed for space battles. And as I said before, the larger capital ships can direct smaller ships that are engaged in the fighting. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that a smaller ship can sometimes beat a larger ship, because in Star Citizen, you're talking about a skill-based game. So if you have a really skilled pilot on a little itty-bitty spaceship and it's attacking a much larger ship, but their crew is a bunch of incompetent morons, then the smaller ship is going to beat it. But I don't imagine that's going to be a very common occurrence. Now, you will be able to target specific locations on enemy ships. This is going to come in really handy if you're like, for example, a pirate, and you want to board a ship and steal all their goodies. Because in order for you to dock with their ship, in order for you to get on board and take all their stuff, you need to have their ship entirely immobilized. So you'll need to target specifically their engines and their thrusters before you can dock with the ship and board her. Now, I imagine some of you out there are thinking, hey, is there going to be any kind of like a cloaking device like the Romulans had in Star Trek? Well, the answer to that is no. There won't be any way to be entirely invisible. However, the ability to lower your heat signature of your ship is sort of a way of being a kind of cloaking device, because it makes it much more difficult for enemy ships to locate you if you have a low heat signature. Also, in the heat of battle, any parts of ships that have been blown off, like wings or engines or thrusters, they're not just going to blow up and disappear. They're going to be floating around in space while the battle is occurring. So that will be an additional hazard that you will need to avoid while you're trying to prevent yourself from getting killed. And as I mentioned before, all ships will have ejection systems. So if you are about to blow up, you can eject and maybe save your life. Now, as far as actual weapons go, there will be loads and loads of weapons to put on your ship. Here is just a very small sampling of what is going to be available by the time Star Citizen is released. For example, there are numerous ballistic weapons that fire actual rounds. There are lots of kinds of laser weapons. There are a whole mess of really cool-looking missiles. And there are also neutron cannons as well. Now let's talk about one of the more amazing aspects of Star Citizen. And by that I mean damage to your ship. Now in Star Citizen, damage to your ship is going to be handled to a level of detail never, ever seen before in any space game ever created. It's going to be absolutely amazing in detail. And I want to show you a little video that illustrates this. But before I get to that, I want to just really quickly outline a few aspects of ship damage. For example, ship damage will be detailed out to a level never seen before. And I realize I just said that, but that bears repeating because it's going to be amazing. Your ships will show varying levels of damage as well. Now, the armor thickness on your ship will play a part in the damage calculations. If you have a more advanced ship that has thicker armor, it will take longer to do serious damage to your ship, for example. Projectiles and lasers that enter your ship will do damage to specific components inside your ship. And over time, your ship's components will basically just wear out. However, your ship's computer will be able to notify you when repairs are needed or when parts need to be replaced. Each component of your ship also has many subparts, levels of detail, and levels of damage. If one of your thrusters is taken out, the flight dynamics of your ship will be altered. Also, after suffering damage and say a part gets blown off, the center of mass of your ship may be changed, and this will possibly destabilize the thruster system on board your ship. Wings will fly off ships as they become damaged. Ships will split in half. Panels on the exterior will come off. Sparks will fly off the surface, and so on. There are also going to be something called fume effects. And these include things such as explosions, fuel leaks, gas leaks, smoke, and so on. All those things are going to be integrated into damage states on your ship. If your ship becomes damaged to the point where you're in a critical state, you can eject from your ship and you will be rescued and taken back to your hangar or taken back to a hospital ship or someplace to get yourself repaired if you're hurt. Now, your shields are going to be affected depending upon the type of weapon that is fired upon them. But of course, your shields, in common with other space sims, will recharge as they take damage. However, as your shields get weaker over time, more enemy shots are going to get through and have direct damage upon your ship. For example, energy weapons such as lasers will be absorbed and weakened to a certain extent by your shields. Ballistic weapons that actually fire rounds will not be necessarily stopped by the shields, but they will be slowed down to a large extent to lessen the damage to your ship. Also, one more thing regarding shields, it will not be possible to extend your shields to envelop a friend's ship that has taken a lot of damage. All right, so now let me show you this really cool video that shows a ship being totally obliterated. This is really, really cool stuff. That was pretty amazing. Really, really cool. Okay, now I want to show you in diagram form what actually happens as you're taking damage to your ship. So here's a little diagram that I made that shows the inside of your ship with various components, and those are protected by outer hull armor, and then on top of that is a fairly thin layer of paint. So as you take hits, this is what happens. As your shields become weaker and weaker, you're going to take fairly mild hits to the surface of your ship, and the paint will start to get burned off. Then over time, your armor is going to get dinged, and little craters will be put in the surface of the armor. And as your ship takes more hits, those little dings and dents are going to turn into large craters in your armor until the point where there's a big gaping hole, which makes for a nice hull breach, and the interior of your ship is exposed. Then as you take additional hits in that area, now you're talking about critical components inside your ship being damaged or otherwise destroyed. This is the point at which your ship blows up. And what happens next depends on where those enemy weapons are able to get through, because the location of damage you take to the inside of your ship will dictate what type of damage takes place. So if it hits your life support systems on the inside, your life support system may totally go out. If it hits a shield generator, your shields will go offline. If it hits your power plant or your engine or other really critical areas like that, your ship is basically going to blow up. And that is essentially how your ship gets killed. Next, I want to show you a sort of life sequence of a ship that shows all the damage states. So here is your nice clean ship, has a little bit of scratches on the surface and maybe a little bit of dirt, but otherwise is in mint condition. And this next view shows the surface layer paint getting burned off, and then little impact craters being put in the hull of your ship. And next you have much, much deeper impact craters and maybe a couple of hull breaches. And at this point, your ship is in pretty serious shape because now enemy rounds are entering the inside of your ship. Now I want to show you a really quick sequence of the images I just showed you to make a more visual impact of what is going to happen when you're getting shot at. All right, so you've been in a space battle, your ship is all banged up to hell, but you survived and you're able to somehow maintain control of your ship. How are repairs done to your ship once it's all shot up? All right, now the good news is that you as a pilot will be able to perform some repairs on your ship when it's out there in the middle of nowhere. However, you will only be able to do like small patchwork jobs. Basically, just enough to allow you to limp your way back to a space station or a planet or a capital ship, which are the only locations where you can have major repairs done to your ship. Now, unlike other space sim games you may have played, you won't have a situation where, say, you go back to a space station and you do a menu command that says repair my ship, and then boom, it's all repaired, and that's it. In Star Citizen, repairs are going to take time, and there are going to be actual animations of your ship being repaired. Now, nothing lasts forever, and neither are your ships. Eventually, your ships are going to become so worn out, they're going to get to the stage where they simply cannot be repaired anymore, and you're going to have to replace your ship. And finally, let's finish up this video with some miscellaneous stuff. Now, if you happen to own a pirate ship, but you're not actually a pirate, that doesn't mean that the United Empire of Earth is going to be coming after you and try to kill you. That's reassuring, because some of those pirate ships are going to be pretty cool stuff. You will be able to scan another player's ship out in space and find out what they've been up to. However, there will be ways to mask your ship's data so that any prying eyes out there can't snoop around and see what you've been doing. You will be able to loan out your ships so your friends or other members in your organization will be able to use your ships. Ships will be purchased at a manufacturer's dealership, sort of like today where we go to a car lot to buy a car. You will also be able to buy a second-hand ship at a used ship dealership. Ships may have user manuals, probably in the form of a PDF file, when you buy a ship. And finally, game time is going to be faster than time in the real world. Now, this has not been set in stone yet as far as what the ratio is going to be, but from what we know currently, every 24 hours of actual in-game time may be just 2 hours in the real world. But again, we don't know that for sure, so don't quote me on that. And there you have it. A whole slew of data about ships. Now, if you have anything you would like to say about this video, please leave me a comment. I really appreciate hearing from all you guys out there, and I love to exchange messages back and forth with all of you. And of course, if you really want to show support for my channel, please click on that little red button below and subscribe. Until next time, this is Citizen Academy, wishing all of you fame and fortune in the verse.